Hello and welcome back to part 2 of What If a Billionaire Invested in Romania. And today we have gone 5 years in the future since last episode, so we're going to see exactly what's happened in Romania, starting off with the national side. Now, if you find Romania in here, have I typed it in right? Of course I have, Romania, there it is. Romania, they're currently 26th in the world ranking, so they've stayed pretty high up actually, considering where they were when we started. They've stayed pretty high. I think they've dropped down a little bit since last time, but they're doing pretty well by looks of things. So if we look at their world ranking history, as we can see here, in the mid-2020s, just after that last episode of the experiment, they jumped up to 8th in the world ranking. So they must have done pretty well in the Euros at that point. The Euros have done pretty well for them. In recent years, though, they've dropped as low as 37th, just after the 2024 Euros. And then they've bounced back up to 26th now. So they're doing all right for themselves. Obviously, 8th was incredible, so they must have done very, very well there. So we'll check out what happened in the Euros then. But obviously, the Euros we've just had have been rubbish, so they've got dropped down quite a bit. So I have to investigate now. If we look at their schedule, then we'll go back to 2020, then see what's happened in the Euros. Then they did pretty well. Had a tough group of Ukraine, Sweden, and France. Lost of France, drew with Sweden and beat Ukraine, which put them through. Beat Bosnia and Herzegovina in the Euro Cup second round, but then lost to Greece in extra time in the quarterfinal. So that's a pretty good game for Romania, I've got to say. Quarterfinals, no easy feat to get, so they did pretty well by getting that. Won all the rest of the games in the year, which is pretty good. World Cup qualifying did not go quite as well though the year afterwards though. I don't think they would have qualified for the World Cup at all. They didn't, but they did get promoted to Division B of the Euro Cup, or Euro League, sorry. Because we see here in this Euro Group C, Division C rather, they did pretty well. So they got promoted to Group Division B. It's a bit confusing, all these groups and divisions are different things when you see on this, so I do apologise for that. If we go back though in 2023, European qualification was pretty solid, to be fair. Some good results there, only losing to Italy twice there. So they would have come second in their group and would have qualified, but unfortunately, 2 losses to Serbia and England and a draw with Czech Republic wasn't enough to get them through into the later stages, which is why they dropped so far down the world rankings. And a poor little run of form actually in the European League Division B again. So again, not doing the best stuff there and haven't really done much, but the year they've just had now, they've sort of done pretty well. They're doing pretty well in World Cup qualifying, so I do expect them off of these first few results. If they carry that on, they will probably qualify for the 2026 World Cup. There's 2 men that we spoke about last time then, Florian Adone and Denis Man. We recognise them to be the 2 biggest talents in Romanian football last time. They still are up there. 147 current ability for Florian and 145 current ability for Denis Man, but neither of them are going to reach their potentials now. I think they're too old to do that now, but seem to have pretty good careers. Vlad Dragomir also up there. He's a decent player that I've had in my Lincoln City save. If you've not watched that, I'd recommend watching that, because that's a pretty good series going on. We had Vlad Dragomir for a while. He was a pretty decent player, so I'm glad to see him doing well in the Romanian side in this experiment. Florin Elkoman also looking pretty decent as well, 27 years old, 137 current ability, plays for Craiova. And then Ines Hagi playing for Brighton at the moment, 26 years old, 137 current ability again. So not a huge current ability in terms of the players here, actually, I've got to say. No one over 150, which I would have thought would be if they get into the quarterfinals of European competitions and stuff. If we look at the top potential, there's no one there who's actually really going to reach their potential, because the youngest player I can see is 26 maybe. Like, there's no one really young here, to be fair. Everyone is pretty old, 26, 25 there. There's no one like 20 years old or anything, so no one's really going to reach this potential, so there's no point looking at potential here. If we look at the under-21 squad instead though, this guy, Daniel George, I think is perhaps how you say that, but please forgive me if I am wrong, because I'm wrong. 143 potential for him, 140 potential for this chap here, but the current abilities aren't very good, which is why they're not in the first side basically. Under 20 side, anyone decent? 148 here for Gabriel. He's 20 years old, so he could reach that if he gets there, but again, it's not quite the potential we're looking for. We're sort of looking for potentials of 150 plus. Under 19 squad, there is 2 players there with 150 plus potential, but are 16 and 18 years old. They've still got a long way to go, so they could reach that potential if they have the right training. Right, let's look at the Romanian first division then. If we look at this then, Romania is sitting 14th in competition rankings right now, but we're at a high of 12th 2 years ago, which suggested they did pretty well back then, but have dropped back down in recent years. So I'll have a look at that in a few minutes' time. Craiova, though, have come out of the cracks and just absolutely dominated. I don't know when the last time they won it outside of this experiment, if they ever did actually. 1990/1991 is the last time they won it. So they've really come out of nowhere to dominate Romanian football now, which is good going for them. So well done to Craiova. Let's go and have a look at the league table properly and see exactly what's happened. So back to the 2021 season, Craiova crowned champions with these 2 teams being relegated, and someone obviously won the relegation playoff, because there's usually 3 relegation spots, but there's a relegation playoff, of course, with the division below. So only 2 teams getting relegated means that whoever came 12th must have won that relegation playoff, of course. There's also the Championship playoffs and the relegation group. So if you look at the Championship playoff, Cluj came second in that, but in the actual league table, they came down in fourth. So a lot of changes in these Championship players, but as long as the title winner doesn't change too much, I'm not too fussed about looking at who goes up or down and things like that. In the relegation playoff, it was Panduri who managed to come sixth in that group, so 12th overall on the table, but won their relegation playoff. Season afterwards, FC Steaua Bucharest win the title. They won the first group by a huge amount of points, which probably set them up for the Championship group, really, if we look at that. They did. They won it by 2 points in the end, so they had a pretty poor Championship group, but they obviously dominated in the normal season there with some good results there. ACS and Gaz getting relegated there, which isn't great as well, but the usual team sort of finishing up there. Craiova having a pretty poor season, finishing fourth in the regular season. Season afterwards, Craiova did win the Championship, became second in the overall table, which means that FCSB didn't have a very good Championship playoff there. They managed to drop a lot of points, leaving Craiova to win it by 5 points in the end. They only won 3 of their games there out of the 10 they played, which is really, really poor actually, considering they had such a lead at the start. But I suppose that goes to show, if you can't beat the best teams, there's no point in you winning the league, is there? So Craiova obviously doing the best there, managing to win the title there this year, which is pretty good going for them, winning it once again. Season afterwards, once again, FCSB managing to come first in the overall group, but Craiova becoming overall champions after beating them in the Championship playoff group, beating them by a good few points again. FCSB just could not do it in these Championship playoff groups, unfortunately, and Craiova seems to just be the masters of it. They're doing really, really well, and obviously we know they've won the title 4 years out of the 5 we've just had. So if we go back into the season we've just had, Craiova win the title and win the regular season as well. Cluj and FCSB finishing second and third overall to get Champions League places, with Dinamo Bucharesti, CSM Poly and FC Viitorul all getting Europa League places as well. So there's 6 teams now that qualify for European football, which is quite good going, I've got to say. So let's go and have a look. Actually, we'll look at the European stuff in a minute. We'll have a look at the second division first of all as well, quickly just in the overview. In a similar fashion, it did jump to a higher 40th 2 seasons ago before dropping back down again. So it's 43rd overall, which is pretty good going, I've got to say, for this. As you can see here, there's been quite a few similar winners, I've got to say, if we look at this. So ACS Poly, we've seen them bounce up and down a few times, but they've been bouncing up and down an awful lot. They go up, down, up, down, up, down every single season as it stands right now. Not very good for them, of course. Voluntari also there a few times as well. They've won it a few times. They bounce up and down as well, but not quite as much. They did manage to maintain themselves in the first division for a little while before going up and down, up and down. Right, let's look at some transfers then for the first division. Obviously, we gave these teams so much money, so let's see if they've been spending it. And as you can see, they've not been spending it as much as other teams have been, for example. And they're not really getting in some top quality players like other experiments have proven. Players coming in from the English second division, the Championship, a lot from the German second division, just from second division teams around Europe, basically, or some of the top divisions in sort of the lower reaches of the European rankings and stuff. So like Lecce are in the top division in Poland, but they're not really deemed as a top level European division, for example. So that's kind of where they're getting the transfers from at the moment. I would have thought with all the money they've got and things like that, they would be getting transfers in from other places, maybe higher divisions like the Premier League, for example, but apparently not. So Cluj spending the money this season, though. They spent a lot of money on these 3 players here coming in from second division clubs around Europe. Doing pretty well. Obviously must have boosted them a little bit because they have come second and third a few times and things like that, which is good going for them. In the season afterwards, sorry, not the season before, season afterwards, CSM Poly decided to spend the most money there, 6.5 million on Jonas Nunsden from Ipswich. FCSB spending a fair bit of money. Cluj also in there in the top transfers as well. They're spending quite a bit of money as well. I think they're the team that seems to spend the most money, Cluj, by looks of things. But is this Jonas Nunsden any good? I mean, he's okay. He plays at Austria Wien now. How much was he sold for? Nothing compared to what he was bought for, and didn't really have a great time in Romania as well, to be fair. So probably not the best transfer, that, unfortunately, for CSM. Season afterwards, Cluj once again spending the big money. They're the ones with the 3 biggest transfers, which sort of goes to show that they are spending the money, but they're not getting the results. They've not won a title yet, or anything like that. So, I mean, they're up there obviously in the European stuff, but they're just not winning the titles, which is obviously what they're going to want to be doing. But now starting to start to see a bit of a transition. They're coming in from top division Belgian side, top division Dutch sides, for example. There's still a few Championship players coming in and things like that, but top division Dutch sides and top division Belgian sides are starting to sell their players now to these teams in Romania, which is kind of interesting as we see that evolution of who is buying from where and things like that. 23-24 season, 8.5 million is the biggest transfer we've seen yet. Alexander Ziku from KN to Craiova. Is he any good, and is he still there? Well, he's not still there, but he looks like a decent player, to be fair. He's got some good physicals and mentals, and for a centre-back where it matters in this technical areas, he's pretty decent as well. So I reckon he's a good player, but only spent the 2 seasons there before moving on to Nantes for 2 million. Only made 17 appearances for them, so, you know, he stayed the 1 season, played a little bit, didn't do that well, and didn't do very well at Nantes either. So I don't know, perhaps he's just inconsistent performances, I don't know, or playing in teams where he's not been able to shine. He did very, very well at KN, so who knows what happened there, but 8.5 million does seem a bit of a waste for 17 games. And then the season we've just had, the biggest transfer has just been absolutely smashed. Kevin Portillo from Beijing to CS Craiova, 19.25 million is huge. Is he any good? My answer to that is, well, no, basically. I mean, where it matters in his technicals, his heading, marking, tackling, even technique to an extent is pretty decent. But then you look at his physicals and his mentals, and they're not that good, really, considering things. They're not that good. They spent a lot of money on him. He's been a fairly average player this season. Played very well in China, of course. I mean, ridiculously well in China with these kind of... And El Salvador as well, ridiculously well. So he's got those stats to back him up, that he does play well. Just couldn't do it in the Romanian First Division. It doesn't matter, though, because they still won the title. But he just couldn't perform, really. A 6.81 in a title-winning side isn't the best result, really, I've got to say. I think the best way still to show European stuff is by looking at individual team fixtures, because I don't think they're going to be getting into the knockout stages consistently enough for us to be looking through that. So we'll start off then with Craiova, the best team we've seen so far in the experiment. In the 2021 season, they qualified for the Champions League by winning the title and managed to get through all the way to the group stages, winning all their qualification rounds, which is fantastic. Had a decent run, to be fair, a relatively easy run, I've got to say, but managed to get through into the group stage against Man United, Benfica and Bilbao, and lost every single game. But at least they were representing Romania in the Champions League, which is absolutely fantastic. That is fantastic to see. I did not expect that to happen this quickly. So Champions League group stages for Craiova, incredible stuff in this 2021 season. The 21-22 season, once again in the Champions League, get through all their qualification rounds, beating some better teams this time. Dinamo and Slavia Prague are probably better than the teams they played last time out. But Tottenham, Besiktas and Dinamo Kiev providing two strong opposition, but they did manage to get the one draw against Besiktas, which was a good result for them, 2-2 there in the last game. So an improvement on the season before by managing to get a single point in the group stages. 22-23 season though, there's nothing there. So I presume there was some sort of financial fair play issue there with something along the lines, spending too much money for something, I don't know really, but they're not in any competition there, so that's a big disappointment, which is probably why there was a bit of a decline actually in the European rankings for Romania, because obviously they got to the Champions League group stages twice in a row, and to then get nothing, that would have really damaged Romanian football's coefficient, so they would have declined because of that. So we could probably put this down to that, really. The season we just had, once again, get to the Champions League group stages again, so perhaps I'm wrong, I don't know. But Craiova doing really, really well to get Champions League group stages every single time of asking. This time they go straight into the playoffs, which shows how much a rise in European rankings improves their chances of getting into the group stages. They don't have to do as many qualifying rounds now, so they go straight into the group stage, or the playoff rather, the one before the group stages, beat Rosenborg, draw with Lazio, but then lose the rest of the games against Dortmund and Porto, and again, once against to Lazio. So they only pick up the 1 point in the group stages there, but again, at least they're there representing Romania. And then the season we just had, again, in nothing. So difficult to say, but I think they must have some really serious financial problems. Right, if we look at FCSB then and how they've done the recent seasons, 2021 season, nothing in European football there, which is a bit unfortunate for them. But the season afterwards, 21-22 season, they're in the Euro Cup and they get all the way through to the Euro Cup fourth qualifying round against Real Hispalis, which is, I'm sure there's a different name for them. Isn't it Betis? I'm sure that's the Real Betis logo. But I could be completely wrong. I don't know. I know not all the Spanish sides have real names on them in Football Manager, so I think this is Betis, but I could be completely wrong there. So if I'm wrong, I am sorry. But they lose to them either way in that fourth qualifying round, the one win away from getting to the group stages. The season afterwards, though, again, nothing in it. So there's a lot of clubs now in Romania suffering financial fair play issues, which is bad for these sides, obviously, but it's good for the sides that are lower down the table that wouldn't normally get European football, but are now given the chance because other teams can't qualify for it. 23-24 season, they do get into the Euro Cup Group E. They get knocked out of the last stage of the Champions League bit, which means they get put into the Europa League instead. And they do alright, to be fair. They beat Anderlecht, they beat Borussia Mönchengladbach, and they draw with Braga, but unfortunately lose those other games, which puts them outside of the top two. But they had a decent run there. They probably would have come third in the group, I'd imagine. So very, very close to qualifying for the later stages, but unfortunately these teams providing just too strong of an opposition. But good going for FCSB there. The season 24-25, they get to the Champions League group stages, so another team reaching the group stages of the Champions League, coming up against Real Madrid, Spartak Moscow and FCP of Porto. Beat Spartak Moscow 1-0, so they're the best side that we've seen so far in the Champions League by getting 3 points in the group stages. But unfortunately, just like Craiova, couldn't qualify for any later stages, and that's the season we just had actually. So good going there for FCSB, managing to get there. Hopefully we'll see some improvement next season for them as well, because that that is a fantastic result. Cluj have also been in competitions quite a bit, and this first season they got through all their qualification rounds against some real strong sides actually, Midtjylland and Fenerbahce, doing pretty well against them. They get into the Euro Cup Group I and do pretty well there as well. Beat Bate, draw with Salzburg, draw with Hoffenheim, but then beat Hoffenheim, beat Bate and lose to Salzburg. But it put them through either way into the knockout stages, where they came across Porto but lost 5-0 on aggregate. But that's the furthest we've seen a side get to in the Euro Cup knockout stage, which is fantastic stuff. I'm really impressed with how Cluj have done there, so well done to them. Season afterwards, to get into the Euro Cup once again, into the group stages, but unfortunately Arkmet, Arsenal and Sparta Prague providing too strong of an opposition there. 22-23 season once again in the Euro Cup group stages there. They beat CSK Sofia, draw with Feyenoord, draw with AC Milan twice, but then win the rest of the other games, or the last 2 games rather I should say. And then come against Fenerbahce, the team they beat a season before, or 2 seasons before I believe, but lost 2-1 aggregate there, agonisingly, in the first knockout round. So good going for Cluj there once again, getting to those knockout stages, again flying the flag for Romania. 23-24 season, quite a disappointing year for them. They lose on away goals there in the final stage of the Euro Cup qualifying there to Lokomotiv. They really fancy themselves, I think, to get into the group stages and into the later stages of the competition, but like they have done in the previous few seasons. So getting knocked out on away goals in the final qualifying round, they'll be upset with that. And then the season we've just had, nothing. So financial problems again, I think, for another side in Romania, which again is really disappointing to see actually, and none of them are managing the money very well, which is a bit worrying. Now I've just had a quick look through the table once again to see who's doing pretty well, and Dinamo Bucharest are doing pretty well for themselves. They're always quietly up and around the European places actually, so they're doing pretty well. So we'll have to look at their results as well. In this first season, the 2021 season, knocked out at the final stage of qualifying there against Panathinaikos, losing 4-3 on aggregate there in that final qualification round. Season afterwards, not in there again. Either they may have finished a bit too low that season, I think, or maybe they had financial issues. They might finish a bit too low actually. The 2022-23 season, only get to the third qualifying round there, lose to AEK after losing to Ghent actually in the Champions League qualifying rounds, and then lost to AEK in the Euro Cup qualifying round. So again, not the best results for them there. 23-24 season, get through that third qualifying round in the Euro Cup, but losing that fourth qualifying round once again, this time to Anderlecht, despite coming back to win 2-0 in the second leg. The 3-0 loss in the first leg was just too much for them to overcome. And then the season, we have just had a much better performance actually in the Champions League qualifying. So they beat Dundee, but then lose to Benfica 6-0 on aggregate in that final Champions League qualifying area, but then get into the Euro Cup group stages because of that, but unfortunately lose every single game apart from one to Basel where they drew, but lose heavily to Anderlecht and to West Ham as well. So unfortunate stuff for Bucharest there, but they're always getting there, which is good to see. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do in the future as well. Right, that's it for this episode then. Next time we'll go a couple more years in the future and see what's happened. But thank you very much for watching today's episode. If you have enjoyed it, make sure you do drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, and I will see you next time for some more billionaire action.